Hello. So you might have noticed that camera just a little bit, that I have decided to call my journal Honest Talk with an Imperfect Woman, because I am definitely imperfect. And I think, journals are typically honest. So it's my Honest Talk with an Imperfect Woman. So, last time I talked a little bit about my mom, and I think this time I'm going to talk a little bit about my dad. So, my dad was born in 1939 in Black Duck, Minnesota. He was raised on a little farm um, that he had a family of his mom, his dad, and I think he had two brothers and four sisters. And they lived in this little farmhouse. He shared a room with all of his siblings because as I understand it, there was only two bedrooms in the house. So kind of crammed. They were poor. They didn't have a lot of modern conveniences. Um, I don't think that they even had a refrigerator or a washer and dryer and a electric stove until later in my dad's life. As a young adult, he had. I remember him telling us a story one time about him purchasing his mother her first washing machine and electric stove, I believe. His dad was an alcoholic, and there was a lot of verbal and physical abuse in his home growing up. A lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, which resulted in my dad as an adult was a very non-confrontational, never raised his voice, never argued, very peaceful person. And I think his upbringing had a lot to do with that. He was drafted into the Korean War shortly after he had gotten married. So he had a wife when he was drafted into the army, but ended up getting a Dear John letter while he was away serving the country. Continued to drink a lot. He started drinking a lot during that time, and actually was an alcoholic himself. So when he got out of the army, he started driving a grain truck uh, back in Black Duck, Minnesota, and would drive grain trucks into North Dakota and eastern Montana. But it was at that time that he met my mom, who was working as a waitress at a little cafe in Black Duck. So they ended up becoming good friends. And after knowing each other for a couple of years, they fell in love and wanted to get married. So my mother went to her husband and told him she wanted to get a divorce. Well, he tried to strangle her, didn't want to have anything to do with getting a divorce. So he refused to give the divorce. So my mom and my dad packed up their things, went to Texas so they could cross the border into Mexico and get a divorce. Um, Dad had already been divorced from his first wife, and mom then was able to get her Mexican divorce. I'm not really sure how that worked back then, but she was able to get a divorce. They got married in a little common law ceremony and lived in Texas for a little while, but the heat, my dad said the heat was just way too much for him. So they decided they would just head north and hopefully end up in, I think Oregon was their destination. But they ended up in Missoula, Montana, and they ran out of money and decided to work for a while to earn some money. Dad drove truck, and my mom worked at a cafe called the Heidel House. She was a waitress. Um, Somehow they ended up from that point moving to Sealy Lake, Montana, and my dad started working in the timber industry and working for a sawmill. And my mom became a stay-at-home mom because she, I guess it would be my sister Pam, was born. So she became a stay-at-home mom. Dad was working at a sawmill. And at that time, in that same time period, right after I was born, which would have been, I was born in 1969, my sister was born in 1968, and my parents bought a little 5-acre piece of property in the Swan Valley that was completely timbered, undeveloped. They bought this little piece of property and decided to build their life there. Um, let's see, what else can I tell you about that? Yeah, so you have these two very imperfect people who have traumas from their past, a lot of baggage from their childhoods, and they decided to settle down, build their life in this little piece of property in the Swan Valley, and raise their kids. They ended up moving a little trailer house onto the property, and it was very tiny. It was um, probably 8 feet by maybe 30 feet. Had a little bedroom in the back, a little bathroom, a kitchen, and a tiny dining room living area. But the area was so small, it was pretty much just a little dining room. And I can remember the bathroom, especially being so small that it was basically a sink, a toilet, and a shower stall all in one. You could sit on the toilet and take a shower because the shower head came right out of the center of the room. And I don't remember myself ever actually taking a shower in that little bathroom, but I remember my mom giving us baths in a tub and then emptying the tub out. Um, Dad was working, like I said, at a sawmill, and he worked for the sawmill that he worked on was called a scrag mill. And what a scrag mill did is it took small logs and it would cut them into 2x4s. Well, he would bring home the 2x4s that were not saleable. They were ones that had were either too short or they had bark on them. And he built an addition onto the side of this trailer house. And he built it by just stacking the boards one on top of each other like that, and built an addition that had a bedroom for mom and dad and a living room. And so they built this addition, covered it with tar paper, so it was essentially a trailer house with a little tar paper shack attached to it. But my mother kept things impeccably clean. She was very tidy. Everything she tried to keep beautiful and clean. We were very poor at that time when I was a small child, but we didn't know anything different. She always made sure we had nutritious meals. They would get what was called commodities, was kind of a food assistance to poor people. It provided dairy products and grain items, cereals, and things like that to help supplement our diet. And we ate a lot of wild game, but always had food on the table and always had clean clothes, clean house. She liked to plant flowers, so we had a lot of flowers growing in the yard, and they just started building their life in this little piece of property. Dad continued to work in the logging and timber industry. He would work away from home a lot of times. He would sometimes be gone all week and only home on weekends. He drank heavily during that time. He was an alcoholic, never was an abusive alcoholic. He never was verbally or physically abusive, but he was drunk a lot of the time when he was home. It would infuriate my mother. She would yell and scream at him. Sometimes she would even throw things. I can remember her kicking a 6-pack or case of beer across the floor and breaking her toe. But I can remember being little and hearing them fight, and I would be scared. And my mom gave me this little Gideon Bible. At that time, um, Gideons would hand out the little New Testament Bibles at schools and things like that. So she had one of those little Bibles. She gave it to me, and I used to keep it under my pillow. And she said that Jesus would keep me from being scared. So that was my first introduction to Jesus, was that little Bible that my mom gave me. Um, we were soon joined by two sisters. So I had Pam as my older sister. Then came Valerie, and Valerie was born um, developmental with a developmental issue. So she did not meet her milestones on time and was delayed. My mom um, has said that it was from her vaccines that caused it. I don't know what caused it, but she did not mentally mature. And then after that, my sister Angie was born. I think I was 5 or 6 when Angie was born. So it was me and my three sisters growing up in this little on this little property. Over the years, my parents added on to the original little addition and got rid of the trailer house and ended up building a pretty nice 3-bedroom house. Mom always gardened, and we had livestock and chickens, sometimes pigs, cows. Um, so I guess I could say don't have a lot of really negative memories from being a small child. For the most part, I think my childhood was happy. Um, it was a good way to grow up. Um, when I started school in first grade, I went to a little one-room schoolhouse. And if you've never been to a one-room school, there's really nothing like it. It's kind of like being homeschooled, only with a few more kids. One teacher, grades 1 through 8 in this little one-room school in Salmon Prairie. I have kind of some fun memories of being there. We'd have ice skating parties. I liked the crafts. I liked just being around the other kids, having recess playtime. Um, my mom said we were bullied, and so she had moved us to, when I was in second grade, she moved us on to a different 1 or 2 room school in Swan Lake. Now, I don't remember the bullying so much, other than the fact that I do remember some of the older kids playing catch with my lunch. You know, they'd toss it back and forth and kind of play keep away till my lunch wasn't edible. And but other than that, I really don't remember anything bad, particularly about this little school. But my mom did, and so she moved us to this other little school in Swan Lake, where I finished. I went to school until I was in 6th grade at this little school. Um, so for the most part, I think my childhood was good. The interesting thing about one-room schools is that you're almost like a family. So we were poor, but I didn't really know we were poor because everybody really accepted you, treated you the same. I'm assuming that none of the other kids in my school were rich kids either. Um, but it was good. So that's what I remember most about being a child. I guess, just in a quick overview. I know if my sisters were telling the same story about being young and growing up, they might have a kind of a different view of it. They would remember different things, and that's kind of the thing about telling a life story, is that several people can have the same shared lifestyle, the same shared home, same life experience, but remember it and experience it personally differently. And so that's kind of a little bit about my dad and my early upbringing. Um, And I think that's all I'm gonna talk about for today. Tomorrow, maybe I will talk a little bit more about my growing up years and some things that I remember. Some of it is kind of tough for me to talk about, but it's there's some things that definitely influenced me far into my adult life, and I'll talk about that in a later segment. Like I said, this is just my little video journal, so I'm going to take it in little segments. It's just kind of as things cross my mind. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I will talk to you later.